Now that we have the app constructor that is going to require from iOS and from Android to pass the string where the database is going to be located, it's time for us to do that. And we mentioned that we're going to be doing it from the app delegate class in the case of iOS and from the main activity class in the case of Android. Now let's go ahead and create that string. The string that is going to contain, to set the entire path inside of the phone where the database is going to be located. And of course, we want to define that string before passing it to the app constructor. The first thing that we need is a string that will contain the name of the file. In this case, we can just set it to travel_db.sqlite. So this is going to be the name of the file. By the way, I didn't set a name for this variable. This is going to be dbName. The next thing that we need is the path, the folder where this file is going to be located. So I am going to create another string, and this is going to be called folder path, and we want to assign it to a string. To get the string for the path, we actually have some classes that can allow us to know that path from a folder that exists in the device. One of the classes is called environment. And notice that as we write, we have access to this environment class. But by default, if you hover over this, you see that this environment class comes from the Android.os namespace. And in fact, you may see a small message that says environment is an ambiguous reference between Android.os.environment and system.environment, meaning that this file knows about two different environment classes. And because it knows about two, we have to tell it which one of the two it's going to use. So we can type Ctrl- or Alt-Enter on our keyboard and select to define the namespace explicitly. So we can use system.environment, which is the one that we want. System.environment is going to have a getFolderPath method that is going to get the path for a certain folder that exists inside of the operating system. And what it is going to require is the name of the folder. Again, we can get the name through system.environment, which has a class that is called special folder. And a special folder, we have a list of folders that we can access from the device. The folder that we want in this case is the personal folder. And now that we have this, the folder path variable now also contains the path for the folder where this database is going to be stored. And finally, we want to define a last string that is going to be full path, and we want to get these two strings together. The best way to do it, because this is a path, is through the path class. To be able to use the path class, we need to add a using directive to system.io, and path is going to have a combine method. The combine method is going to receive a list of strings or an array of strings. And first we want to pass the folder path, which is going to be combined with the DB name. So the full path is going to have the entire folder path plus the name of the database. And it is the full path, the one that we want to pass to the app constructor. So now it is the second constructor, the one being used. I am going to copy this definition up to iOS. So right now we were on Android, we can close the main activity, and I'm going to do something very similar in the app delegate for the case of iOS. When I paste it, of course, the first thing that I have to do is add a using directive to system.io so I can use the path class. But there is also another change that I need to perform in here. In the case of iOS, we need to use another folder. The folder personal also exists, but the database has to exist on another folder. The folder that we need in this case is at the same level as the personal folder, meaning that both the personal and the folder that we need are inside of the same folder. So if you think about it, what we have to do is get out of the personal folder and get inside of the folder that we need. The reason why we need this other folder to be used in iOS is because when publishing this application, Apple won't allow you to store files into this folder. You would have to change this folder. So what we can do to get outside of the personal folder is use path.combine pass first the path for this personal folder. We're going to need a parenthesis at the end. And after setting the personal folder, we can add 2 dots. If you're not familiar with this, 2 dots will allow you to navigate back from a folder into the parent of this folder. Now that we are in the parent of the personal folder, we can get inside of the folder that we need. In this case, that folder is called library. And now we have the actual folder path for iOS. This folder path is also going to be combined with the database name, which is still going to be the same. And then this full path has to be passed to the constructor, to the second constructor of the app class. And so our application is already able to use SQLite. We use the packages needed for that. We also created a second constructor for the app class that receives a string that should contain the entire location of the database. And we have come to the iOS and the Android projects to create different versions for each to create a different string, because each will have to locate this database in a different folder, and then pass that string to the app constructor. By now, our portable class library is entirely ready to start using SQLite. So in the next lecture, we're going to create the type in C# for one of the tables that is going to exist inside of our SQL database.